Awesome. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. This is Coach Joe again of Bala Fitness. This is my podcast. I have a special, amazing guest here, a fellow Spartan SGX coach, fellow Spartan OS instructor. He's even wearing an awesome shirt here. If you're watching, he has a Spartan Death Race shirt. I'm envious of that. I definitely want that someday in my bucket list. His name is Christian Bizzotto, and he is here to share his story, his journey. So Coach Christian, I want to introduce you to him. He's a performance coach dedicated to building unshakable mindsets, resilient bodies, and tactical readiness with a deep focus on mental toughness, movement efficiency, and real-world preparedness. He has helped athletes, tactical competitors, and everyday people unlock their full potential. His coaching philosophy blends mindset, mobility, and endurance to create individuals who are not just fit, but ready for anything, whether it's a competition, a crisis, or simply showing up stronger in life. Passionate about discipline, faith, and pushing limits, he leads by example in every challenge. He says here, let's go, let's grow. I love that. Christian, say hello.
Hello, beautiful people.
I love that. I love how you say that. Every post I see, when you welcome them, you say hello, beautiful people. I love that. So Christian, with that bio you shared with me, I love everything you said there, especially that last part, let's go, let's grow. If you had, and this, I do this to every guest, 1 minute to tell the audience, the people that are watching, who you are. Try not to use the same words that you gave me, because this is gonna put you on the spot. Tell us about yourself. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm a con man.
Whoa, that's straight to the point.
Straight
Okay.
to the point. You know, I don't want it to be misinterpreted. I have all the certifications that might say I'm a personal trainer, but I'm not here to count your reps. Like, I'm here to convince you of what you're capable of. I'm here to create the mindset that's going to have you running at the obstacles that are keeping you from your maximum potential.
I love it. That's some serious stuff. I love that. That's straight to the point. You're not beating around the bush. You're just like, that's important. Mindset's everything, especially when we do Spartan race, in life in general, right? So I wanted to kind of start with your story. So you say you're a performance coach, and you started somewhere, right? So whether it's personal training, whether it's group fitness, whether it's group coaching, like, where did you actually get your start getting into this industry?
So I got my start in understanding fitness because I was working with this client who was 300 plus pounds, was just regaining mobility, was walking at the beach every day barefoot, trying to regain like the articulation in the foot that was broken. And one day had the idea of running from one garbage can to the other. Those garbage cans are 50 feet apart from each other. At the end of that 50 feet, this person was like huffing and puffing and thought they were going to die, but they had just run 50 feet, which seemed impossible a few months earlier when they were walking around with a walker, you know? And that first client was myself. And that garbage can became 2 garbage cans, and then became 3. And when this whole thing started for me really is at the end of the beach was a golf course. And I didn't know how far that was, but every time I would be adding garbage cans, like my goal was like when I would stop running, I would then walk to the golf course. You know, like my goal was like, one day I'm going to run here. One day, as I was dying, I was like, we're not stopping. And I ran all the way to the golf course, and I almost had a heart attack.
Oh,
and
wow.
and I walked back from the golf course, and I get in my car. I'm stoked because I've just done something monumental for the guy who was sitting on the couch with a broken leg and a walker and, you know, weighing 300 pounds. I get in the car and I park at the north end of the beach, like right where I start my runs, and I reset the odometer. And now I start driving like towards the golf course.
Wow.
And it's like, it hits like half a mile, and then like 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 9. And it it was a mile, like right when I got to the golf course.
Wow.
And I had to pull over because I was so emotional in that moment, because I thought I was never going to be able to run 1 mile.
Mm-hmm.
And that really was like a pivotal moment for me. That year was a lot of change for me. My wife left. I started a new business. I started losing weight. You know, I had a little girl that looked up at me every day like I was something special. And I had really a short window to change my entire life before she realized the person I really was.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in that window of time, like a year and a half, I started a multi-million-dollar company. I lost 100 pounds, and I became the person I wanted her to look up to. I didn't want to be a parent telling her what to do. I wanted to live the life that she could see that I would want her to reflect. And that's how this whole thing started. You know, like I got into fitness because I didn't know anything, and I was just trying to make myself better. Moved to Miami shortly after that. We launched this company, which now has this crazy office that I'm sitting in, and I realized that once we were done developing some of the technology, every day, like I couldn't wait to leave work to go coach CrossFit classes for free. Like I interned at CrossFit 305, and then later I started having my own classes. And one day I was running. I was getting people ready for a Tough Mudder, which was like a 10-mile race. Nobody at CrossFit was down to program anything for someone running 10 miles. They thought I was nuts. And so I got this group of people ready. We all went to Tough Mudder. It was awesome. And as we're running Tough Mudder, I'm running with this guy, Coach Jeff. He's an amazing dude. And I was like, Jeff, I'm like, we should do this. We should do this for a living. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, we should train people for this. And he's like, we do that. I'm like, no. I'm like, we do CrossFit. I'm like, we should have a place that has like the walls and like monkey bars and all these things. And it was that conversation that started my journey into being like a Spartan SGX coach.
Okay. I love it. So
yeah.
So your real drive, the ultimate, like digging deep, is your daughter. Like that's what kind of drives you daily. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. She's a grown up now, but now I have another daughter who's 10 months old. So now I have like a new daily drive.
Congratulations. That's amazing, brother. Yeah. Like I have a daughter myself. People probably seen her on my social. She's 19 now. And it's like, I still see the little girl in her, and she's my daily drive. She's what puts purpose behind why I wake up, why I get up and do the things I do. And that's amazing that you do it. Now you have 2 girls, and it's like double the drive, double the motivation, double the purpose behind what you're doing, right? So becoming a Spartan SGX coach, what year was that roughly? Was that kind of the early days of Spartan SGX?
That was 2014. I was at CrossFit A1A, and I had just taken like my CrossFit L1, and I'm like, there's got to be like something like this for obstacle course racing. And it just so happened that the next day was a Spartan SGX L1 in Tampa, which is like a 4 or so hour drive from Miami. I saw this. I had none of the prerequisites. Like I didn't have like a CPR certification. I had just taken the CrossFit L1. So I didn't even have it. Like, I didn't know, I assumed I passed, but I didn't know if it was pass or fail. So, and that wasn't a prerequisite anyway. Like you couldn't use that at the time as a prerequisite. So I emailed Dr. J, and I'm like, hey, my name is Christian. I'm at this CrossFit. I saw this thing. I would love to come do the workshop, and then if I pass this CrossFit thing, if you would allow me to use that as a prerequisite, this is what I want to do. And and Dr. J like sent me over like some downloadables, I am probably the only person that went straight to Kinko's and printed all of that stuff. So I had like a 308-page book. Then I had like the workshop book. I got in the car from Kinko's, drove to Tampa. I got there like 11 o'clock at night, read the 300-page book because I thought we needed to have that done before showing up. Slept nothing. Did an ice bath in the bathtub of the hotel. Walked over there in the morning, and I met Dr. J, and I think he had such a profound impact on my life. You know, the way he described coaching, I really resonated with. Like, I was like, oh, I'm like, this isn't about like counting somebody's reps. This isn't about, this is like about changing somebody's mind and instilling these values that he has presented us with. And that was my Kool-Aid, man. Like, I was all in, and I guess I had something that Dr. J was interested in. Because shortly after, he reached out to me and he was like, hey, he's like, I'm launching the Spartan Level 2 program. It's going to be at the farm in Pittsfield. And he's like, we're inviting 10 people. He's like, I would love for you to join us. So I was in the first group of Spartan Level 2 coaches. And then, you know, progressing from there, I then shadowed, like, I took the Level 2 course, I think like 3 times, like shadowing Dr. J, watching it online. And when he wasn't, you know, when he was in the low points of his condition, and there were discussions of like, are we going to just end the Spartan program? Dr. J was like, I would like, you know, to see Christian like continue this in his own way, like in his own eyes. And it's very humbling.
Yeah.
Because it's not a shoe I can fill.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I'm never going to have all the knowledge that Dr. J had. But I was very honored, you know, and he had such a profound impact in my life and all the lives I've changed since then. That to me instantly was like, oh, I just have to, like, I am going to be the best at doing this. Not that I can be 100%, you know.
I love that. No, it's okay, brother. Like, I appreciate you opening up about that, because I know that's heavy on you, a lot of us, like me included. And, you know, being part of that Spartan SGX team is, many people probably don't even know what SGX means, but like, that's that Spartan group experience. And it's not just coaching, it's like the whole mindset, it's the whole community, it's the whole vibe. It's, you know, there's only a select few of us that do it, and there's a reason why we do it, because we resonated with Dr. J. And those that don't know who Dr. J is, that's Dr. Jeff Godin. This I didn't know myself until one of the meetings we had, I think end of last year, because I battle depression, anxiety. And so when I'm hitting my lowest points, I literally have to check out. My wife has to pull me away and take me apart and rebuild me, right? Because mentally I'm not there. Physically I'm not. I can do the physical things, but just more emotionally, mentally, I can't put 2 and 2 together. And that's the hard part. And so during that time when I was away, I found out that Dr. J had passed, you know, and he was battling cancer. And so those that are listening, that hits me hard, because my dad passed away of cancer. My wife's an oncology nurse. I hear all these stories all the time. And for you to open up about that, I appreciate you doing that, brother, because it resonates with me deeply too. Like, Dr. J inspired me to continue from level 1 to level 2, then become Spartan OS instructor. And the last time I actually got to chat with him, he wanted me to move up to like becoming a Spartan SGX instructor, like run the courses over here on the West Coast. And so that's a promise I told Cynthia. She's the kind of the head of Spartan SGX right now. She took over for Dr. J. I'm doing that to honor him, you know, in a way that you're doing what you're doing, been asked to do to honor him. And so each of us, like, there's a lot of fellow coaches, Coach Joseph Bautista, right, in Arizona. There's all these fellow SGX coaches that I connect with, I resonate with, and that's why I wanted to bring you on, because that's a really, really powerful thing. And the Spartans that are out there, if you're listening, you're watching, find an SGX coach in your area, because we're going to give you the knowledge, the base, the foundation to build from, to become the best athlete you can be, to have the right mindset possible, to do the things you want to do on course, but also in life, you know. And that's a really, really big thing to take away from it. And yeah, and the fact that Dr. J is no longer with us, that's going to continue to propel us, to drive us forward, to continue to grow his legacy and build and build and build, because there's so much more that we need to do. So with that said, man, that hits me hard. I was bawling when I was on that meeting with Sin and Coach Joseph and all the other ones. But when you do Spartan race, like, you're on course, right? And those that are listening, watching, Spartan OS means Spartan Obstacle Specialist. And we are the instructors, or two of the instructors. There's more of us out there, not a lot, but there are ones out there. Megan Beck is one included, right? And let's see, Chris in Arizona, Joseph in Arizona. There's a lot of us who just kind of look for us, and we run.
Richens is doing most of them right now.
Yeah, and we run these workshops on course, but also we can run these workshops inside a gym. So I have one coming up end of March, end of this month. I don't know when your next one is, but when you run your OS workshop, you're primarily doing the ones on course, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So could you kind of elaborate on what that would entail? Like, if someone was new to Spartan, they go, I'm in Florida, I want to fly over to where Christian is and attend the Spartan OS workshop that's in your area. What are they gonna expect, and what are they gonna learn from you?
Yeah. So my next one is actually in a couple of weeks. It's at Spartan Palm Beaches, which I think is March 28th. I think is the Friday before the race. And, you know, from the beginning, we start with I start like a group warm up, and I warm up the way that I warm up myself, like it, you know, and I try to make it practical and something. I'm a big believer that simple is sustainable. That if I give people like crazy warm up stuff, they're just gonna not get it done. So it's like, if we have to hit like these things, and we'll go through like those warm ups. I like doing, you know, and if you've seen like some of the death race video I was in, and I'm calling out like 6-point burpee, hands down, feet back. So I'll have everybody say their name, and then they call out hands down, feet back. It gives everybody an opportunity for their voice to be heard. And then it gives everybody an opportunity to give a command that everybody else will follow, you know, so that creates like a tightness in the group.
Love it.
And then I get into the running mechanics of it as part of the warm up. I think running is one of like the most misunderstood components of sport. And I say that because over and over, I see running being coached as like, just run faster and farther and harder. And I'm not of that mindset, you know, like I'm of the mindset of understanding that we want to go from one stable foot position to the next stable foot position. We want to keep our feet under our hips. We want to use global extension and gravity to move us forward. And we want to, you know, make as little unnecessary movement as possible, you know, economy of movement, so that we can keep the heart rate down, and we can be like in as close to an oxidative state as possible for the longest distance possible. You know, like I work out with a lot of ultra runners, and I'm like, man, we could win this whole race with your heart rate never going over 150 beats per minute if we're just very efficient at how we move, you know. So that's something, running is something I geek out on a lot. So I make that part of the warm up, and generally, like, I'll have somebody, like, I'll have them run and kind of analyze the group, and then when they come back from the little bit of run, then I get into like my philosophy, how and not just how, but why I think the things that I do, where I learned those things. I think that's fundamentally important. One of the things that that I think is important about the Spartan program is that continuing education.
Mm.
And I tell people all the time, because I urge people to hire coaches all the time, even if it's not me. I'm like, everybody needs coaching,
Mm-hmm.
especially coaches.
Yeah.
And if you're a coach and you're not investing in your own knowledge, you have no right to ask people for money for your knowledge, because it might not be the most state of the art thing right now, Right. So I spend time with high level coaches in every little niche of the things that I like to geek out on.
Mm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time talking to Rich Diaz. I know some people think he's like a controversial character, but the fact is he creates people who win races, and I wanted to learn from that guy, even though like early on when we first connected, like 15 years ago, it did not go over well. Like we butted heads, but I swallowed my pride, and I was like, oh, I'm like, this guy actually is saying things that I agree with, and I want to learn from this guy, So it's like I'm constantly trying to get better at every aspect of the things that I teach, so I can be better for my clients,
Mm-hmm.
So I get into the running thing, and then we start getting out on the obstacles. During the warm up is when I take the time to kind of discuss, what to wear, which is very important for people to understand. Like, fortunately, it's a sport that has a very low barrier of entry. Like as a kid, I raced mountain bikes, and if I was going to try and bring an underprivileged kid to a mountain bike race, that takes thousands of dollars of equipment investment. At a Spartan race, if you're only doing one, you don't even need to necessarily buy a pair of shoes. But there are things that are important. Like I'm a big proponent of wool socks. Socks that are 5 fingers, so that you don't get blisters in between the toes, not wearing cotton, anything at all, like no cotton underwear, no cotton shorts or shirt. So we get into all those things. And then depending on the race distance, I try to gauge an understanding of, if you are running the beast, you're going to be out there for X amount of time.
Right.
Like you have to be prepared that the body's going to burn through like about 100 grams of carbohydrate every hour. If you're running the beast, if you're walking it, maybe not, but you still have to account for the elements. So oftentimes, if it takes me like 7 hours to do a beast with a big group of people, that's actually more exhausting than if it was taking like 3.5 hours to just run it. So it's taking all those things into account so that when people show up on race day, they feel prepared on that start line, because they're like, oh, I'm wearing the right thing. I know, like, I'm going to have this strategy to hydrate and the strategy to eat. I've brought X amount of fuel. I pre-hydrated. I get into like a little pre-hydration process. And a lot of the things that I teach them is not going to be relevant the next day.
Right.
But it's like, look, your next Spartan race, this is like the week lead up to it.
Yeah.
This is the 8 weeks of how we can prepare our hands leading up to it. Now that we're here, we're going to deal with everything that we have coming. That's part of it.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, because it's important. Like I'm coaching a group of, new Spartan race athletes. They put together this, like, they're part of a Rotary Club, which is like a local group, and they're trying to fundraise for a high school. And they told me, hey, Coach Joe, we found you on Spartan's website. I was like, cool, that's awesome. Thank you. And then they go, do you offer Spartan racing? And I work at a CrossFit box, CrossFit of Fremont, and where I do my DECA events and things like that. And they're like, and so the very first question I said, how much do you run? What do you know about running? And they're like, oh, we just go to the track and we just jog around. I'm like, oh, great. Which race are you doing? And then they're like, Spartan Beast. I was like, oh, which Spartan Beast? And like, we had that whole conversation, like the first day. This was part of their, consultation assessment. And it's important for them to realize, and I talked them out of doing the beast. I was like, actually, I think it's better you guys try the super or the sprint. because you guys are not yet ready. I even told them that week one, like, you guys are not yet ready for what's to come. And, you know, there's so much more you have to learn and do to prepare, especially like you mentioned earlier, fuel is important, right? And digging into that, like, if we talk about fuel, like, I don't know if you ever met Yancey Culp in person, but
Yeah, of course.
so being part of the DECA team, like, I've had these like conversations with him in person, and he told me this one thing. It was so funny. Like, we were sitting at a coffee shop eating breakfast together at it's called Idea World. It was an Idea World conference, and we were bringing Spartan DECA Roadshow there. And we're sitting there eating breakfast. He was right next to me, and he took his he took this container of sugar and started doing this in his coffee. And he just kept pouring it. And I was like looking at my watch, like, how long has it been already? He's still doing this. And he looks at me and he goes, Joe, he's, I'm gonna tell you one thing. I'm gonna tell you one thing only. He's like, you need a fuel to win. I was like, I looked at him, I was like, damn, like, that's deep. Like, for him to say that, because before we're fueling to get have a grueling day of DECA, strong people coming in from, like, I forgot what time we started, 9 a.m. until about 5 or 6. And we didn't really get to take breaks. We didn't get to really eat. And so the only meal we had was just that breakfast. And so he's kept pouring in. He said fuel to win. And so, like, that's stuck with me since, you know, and that was like maybe 2-3 years ago. And every coach that I've met has something that they say to their clients, their students, anyone they coach. So do you have something that you want to maybe share that you might say to an athlete that's coming in brand new to Spartan, you know, or even death race, because I know you've done death race. Like, what's one thing you would say to them that kind of just like spark their mind, get them to think a little bit deeper?
I don't know if I have like a one-liner like that, but one of the things that I try to have people understand is like manage expectations. You know,
okay.
And I think of like in terms of like Palm Beach race is coming up right now. It's a 5K. So I'm like, as I'm getting into this 5K, I have agreed to run 5,000 meters. I have agreed to do 600 burpees. And every obstacle I complete is just 30 less burpees from 600.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
As long as that's my outlook, I'm going to be fine with making or not making an obstacle and paying the price.
Yeah.
But when people miss the obstacle and then the guy's like 30 burpees and they're like, what? And I'm like, oh, you just weren't prepared. Like, in terms of, no one told you what's really going on here.
Right.
You know, and you have to manage expectations, you know?
I love that. That's a really good kind of shift in perspective too. Like, as you're doing a race or preparing for a race, you have to have that mindset. A lot of the times I've seen myself being on course racing, like, say I jump into age group, I don't want to race, or I take a group in and we're just all racing together from start to finish, coaching them through. They don't realize, like you said, what's really going on, because I'll see other groups and they're cheating their way through obstacles or not doing it the way that were intended. And I'm standing there like trying to like not pull my hair out. I'm like, you know, don't do the bender like that, or don't do the Z-wall like that. Like, there was one race I was at a beast. They were putting their feet in the handholds, like the holes, and they were climbing it.
Of Olympus?
Yeah, Olympus, right?
I literally saw that at Jacksonville. I'm like, hey, buddy, that's hands only. And the guy's like, really? Yeah. I'm like, yeah. He's like, but then how do you do it? I'm like, that's the obstacle. Like, the hard part is, now how do you do it?
Yeah, and that's funny that you saw it too. So I'm sure all of us have seen it on course, and it's just like, I don't know how else we can get people to, because most people aren't going to read like the rule book or the handbook or like study, you know, what they need to do beforehand, right? They just go in, they sign up, go in, maybe they got a Groupon, and like whole groups going in, they just do it for fun. But like, end of the day, you want to be able to tackle obstacles, you know, with a lot of proficiency and efficiency, and just being smarter, not working harder. I love what I see on your, you know, what you've shared on social, like Instagram. You go over like techniques, like where someone that's like brand new, let's say I didn't know anything, and I'm going to Google like how to tackle, you know, bender. There was one post you put up recently, which I loved. Like, you showed use of momentum, like using your knees to generate momentum so you can you're basically traversing. I think you called it going backwards in a sense. Like, can you kind of elaborate on your technique there that you showed?
Yeah. Most people on the overhead obstacles are trying to make forward progress. Where actually I'm trying to draw my legs backwards as far as possible and become like a grandfather clock.
Yeah.
And use that pendulum action to move me forward.
Right.
So my focus is always on the back pull. Whereas I see a lot of people focusing on like, I'm here and I'm trying to go there forward. I want to pull back and then swing forward and just use momentum. And what that does for me is it takes a lot of the strength component out of it and allows me to skip bars or rings or whatever apparatus is above me. And it's not in terms of showing off. It's like, hey, my body started here, now it's over here. By skipping these, that's less time under tension.
Right.
That's less time that I'm hanging, But oftentimes we don't think about it like that. We get there and we're like, we're trying to go forward.
I love that.
Sometimes we just have to see it from the outside. And part of that is, when my daughter was very young, she got into obstacle course racing. She was being bullied at school. So she, like, her outlet was coming to my gym and just doing all these obstacles. And she became like very slick at it. And when she was like, I think she was 8, she ran her first trifecta. When she was 9, she did a 24-hour battle frog race. But the thing is, I was teaching like little kids, like her and all her friends, and I was teaching my mom. So I'm teaching like this 100-year-old lady and like an 8-year-old. My mom's not really 100, but I'm teaching like an older person and a younger person to get through the same race weekend, and I wanted to break things down like as simple as possible. And I wanted for both of them to be able to do the overhead stuff without having like this huge upper body, and so we work on hang time. We work on the basics, which is just, literally just hanging from a bar, farmer's carry, developing that grip, endurance. Grip strength is important a little bit also, like on Hercoist, but mostly it's like we need to have the endurance to get from one side of the obstacle to the other. Like Olympus is one of those obstacles that's very endurance based. Like you see a lot of people have the technique for like 5 panels and they get to that 6th panel and they're out of gas, whether it's their hands or their legs or whatever, so I try to break things down like as simple as possible, like as if I was teaching a child. And then I try to make things as efficient as possible for most people, and for most people it's more efficient to use momentum than it is to use upper body strength.
Yeah, 100%. Like I've shared this on my previous seasons on this podcast. Like some of my background comes from Ninja Warrior, and a lot of the principles I use as a coach and on course myself is from Ninja Warrior. Like there was one post, I don't know if you saw this. There was a athlete, I think he was in somewhere in Europe, and he was doing, I think he did monkey bar rig, and he did basically what's called a lache. So you grab the bar and you like have that big backswing and you fly forward, you release and you grab that this bar. And I use that a lot. Like that's how I get through, and I've taught a lot of clients to do the same. And it kind of goes the same principle, like break it down so it's simple, easy to follow. I'm also an engineer, so like my brain, I reverse engineer all these obstacles to find what's the most efficient way to get through. And that's kind of how I break it down when I do my workshops too. It sounds like we're very similar in that way. Because if we can't explain it to, like you said, I don't want to say it, but your mom or or your daughter, like they should be able to do it regardless of age, regardless of background, regardless of fitness level. So I wanted to ask you, like digging into shifting our conversation here, because I want to be respectful of your time too. You also mentioned here you're doing tactical readiness. So there's some images that you shared, which will go up on the cover for this YouTube and podcast. Tactical background is very, very important, I would say, in life. there's a famous coach out here in California, Jason Khalipa, in the CrossFit.
Yep.
He's created this pretty cool program targeted to help dads, level up, right? Become better fathers and be ready for whatever happens in life, right? And I've always wanted to get into that myself. It's just I have so much going on right now. It's not even funny, but I eventually will dig into that. So like for you being a coach that coaches clients on that, if someone were to come to you and ask, for your help, for your guidance, like what would they expect to kind of hear from you as far as a 1 minute pitch goes? Like how could they benefit from working with you?
I mean, I don't know that I can sum that up in a minute, but the first things first is developing like the mindset that's going to get them to invest the time. And I didn't know Jason had that program. That's amazing, but that's actually why I got into like the tactical stuff. I'm a firearms instructor, and the principles that I love about being a Spartan racing, and the principles I love that you have to be tactical with in like Patriot games or tactical games. If I were to just sum it all up in one thing, like I just want to be the most prepared defender. Like I am the first line of defense at keeping my daughters and my wife safe. Whatever that means. If that's like a hand-to-hand combat, if that's with a firearm, if that's just getting off the X, if that's reading a situation and evading the situation altogether, which is like the most important part of any fight. Like I do a lot of running backwards, and I used to teach my kids when I had the gym, I'm like, you have to be able to run backwards to escape a situation. Is that cowardly? Great. I love it. I'll be cowardly all day, not in a fight right now. You know what I mean? So it's getting off the X, whatever it is. My mindset always really comes down to how this thing even started. It always comes down to like my children.
Yeah.
And I want to be the most prepared. It's not like I want to be this fanatical person of having like all these guns or whatever. It's that God forbid something happens, it is my responsibility to keep my family safe. Yeah. It's not the responsibility of how fast can someone else get there. I am dad. This is what I'm here for. This is why I train. And being in that mindset, Joe, is like, you don't have to ask if I'm training hard, because I'm not doing it for physique. I'm not doing it for an Instagram. I'm doing it because if somebody kicks down my door, I am going to be ready for whatever is on the other side, right? Whatever it is. Like I am the first line of defense with my kids.
I love it. Yeah, that's important. It's kind of like if the apocalypse happened today, I tell my clients this all the time. Like, what would happen if, the world ended today and we had to like save our families, save our, like in your case, your two daughters, your wife, for me, my daughter and my wife. Like, what do I need to do to get from, a 45-minute drive to back home so I can get my wife and then get our daughter who's like 300 miles away? Like, how would I get there without any technology, without any resources? I probably would have to get there on foot. And so my body should be ready to have the endurance, the stamina to get over there, because I need to protect her. I need to be aware of what's going on around me the whole time. And that's why we train, we move, because it's very important. You have to have this different mindset. Like you have to be aware. It's kind of like using the concept of proprioception, like just being aware of where you are in space, but I'm just aware of my surroundings. And like, anytime I'm in a gym, I'm not just looking, there. I'm like scanning the whole thing and looking at the door, looking at the garage, and always being ready, and that's really, really important for people to come to realize. And so I love that you're able to help, clients and people like that might need that kind of help. So starting to wrap up our conversation here, because I want to be respectful of your time as well. And I want to get to those questions that I usually ask my guests. You mentioned here in your bio, dad bod framework. I'm wondering what that is. I didn't dig into it so much, and I'm wondering, can you share something about what that entails?
Yeah, I love what I do as far as like teaching people obstacle stuff, and this is like a Spartan oriented kind of podcast. But where I have the most impact is in life coaching, helping people that have addiction problems. And what I work with the most is people who are dads. And the kids really is like a huge tool to me, getting them to make like that investment into sobriety, into changing their life. And I've repeated this process of all of these overweight, broken, I was trying to think of a better term, but maybe that's the appropriate term.
Yeah.
Overweight, broken men who had success financially, but were not successful in parenting, were not successful in terms of being prepared. What I remember going to this client's house, and we got in the conversation of preparedness, and he's like, I have all, had like boxes of ammo, and he's like, under the house I have all this canned food. I'm like, dude, you weigh 300 pounds. Like, you're the first one to die. Like, it doesn't matter what you have stored under the bed, dude. Like, if you can't, I'm not saying you have to run a marathon, but if you can't complete a marathon with no training, you are not prepared, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's my basis of it is like, if you can't move 50 clicks, you're not ready. Like, I can ruck 50K right now, even with a boot on my foot after my operation, if I had to keep one of my kids safe. You know what I mean? So I call it the dad bod framework, is just to get dads to engage with me and just get them on this program, and I work a lot with breaking people's addiction, and and for some people that's alcohol, but for a lot of dads, and this is like the unspoken part of addiction, for a lot of dads it's porn, and being able to like erase that from someone's life doesn't just change them. It changes their relationship with their wife or ex-wife. It changes their relationship with the next person, because now they're not trying to live up to an unrealistic expectation of what happens in the bedroom setting. And when men, and I hope I'm not getting into topics that we're not supposed to talk about on the podcast, but shut me down if I am. When men start at an early age and their release is how, I'm behind closed doors with a magazine, or now with a phone, and I'm looking for this fast relief of endorphins. That's not realistic. That's not what happens in a relationship. So breaking patterns and breaking limiting beliefs, like that's where most of my coaching comes in. And it just so happens that like most of or actually all the clients that sign up for that currently, they are all dads. They're all guys that are like in their 40s, but their confidence is based on their watch and the car that they drive.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's really like creating a different mindset of like, who am I now that I'm broken free from all these things that are keeping me from my maximum potential, whether that's alcohol or drugs, or whether that's pornography, or whether that's gambling,
I love it. That's amazing that you do that. I definitely am inspired by that, because there's a lot of dads out there that are just lost, same even for moms too. Like, moms are just as important, obviously, in life, because they're the ones that give us life. And the dads especially, I lost my dad when I was a senior in college. So I had another dad in my life, my stepdad, and I would say he wasn't probably the best figure in my life, but I definitely felt like I was a little lost in that sense. Fortunately, I had another dad, my wife now, who is now my wife is my wife's dad. My father-in-law, he's a really good father figure for me. And I had a couple of uncles that were really good. So I eventually found these dads that I could model myself off. So the fact that you're able to coach dads, like that's really, really powerful. Like, I would love for people to reach out to you, especially if they need some help, from a coach like you. So circling back here, I wanted to kind of bring it back to the Spartan, ethos. Spartan race has this thing called death race. And you mentioned before we started recording, you wanted to get back to Spartan Death Race, and then something happened, right? And so you're dealing with an injury. You kind of hinted at it, your Achilles. Is that something you want to maybe share or talk about, and how you're trying to start to it?
Yeah. So January of last year was Patriot Games. I had a good showing at that event. Grace of God, I won my age group, and then I won the overall. So it was like a fantastic day. But I had this like nagging like Achilles pain. And then after that, it just and mind you, it's not like a Spartan race. Like you're only running at the most like 50 meters at a time. But at the end of that weekend, like it was really hurting. And so I went and got an MRI. My training partner for years of Spartan races is a doctor, sports radiologist. And I'm like, Danny, let's figure this out. We did some scans. I did have an Achilles injury, and he's like, let's take some time off of running and really focus on like healing, not eating inflammatory things, and see if we can make it better. Through the year, I didn't really do any Spartan races. Like I did a few, but it was mostly like just shooting content and doing the workshops. So again, it wasn't like running competitive. It wasn't like full out runs. And it just kept getting instead of getting progressively better, it got progressively worse. So then like right before like the Central Florida, which is like in December for us, but right before that race, it was probably like its peak of pain. But I had committed to getting this group of people through their first trifecta. So I was like, I'm in it to win it. If this snaps, we'll deal with it later. So I did that. And then after that, like it was very hard to walk after that. I still had a Patriot Games coming up on the calendar. And I was like, we'll do everything we can. We'll do PT. We'll do whatever we can to just get ready for that. And when I realized I went to that event and I finished third, which is not bad unless you're expecting to finish first. Yeah. Not expecting in a sense, but like I put in so much work in these other aspects of training for that not winning, I identified immediately. I was like, oh, what's happening is I'm getting to the firing line and I'm out of breath. And the reason for that is my aerobic capacity is not nearly what it was when I was running 40 miles a week minimum. Like my aerobic capacity was so much better that I would get to these shooting events. I would get to the firing line and I would just be very cool, calm, and collected, and I could just execute. Now I'm at the firing line and I'm having to like really focus on slow the breathing down to get the job done. Like I identified that halfway through the event. I was like, oh man, this like, I'm definitely not where I need to be. So like 2 days after that, I was like, I'm like, Danny, I'm like, we got to do another scan. We got to see where we're at. We did another scan. It was way worse. He's like, his name is Dr. Feinberg, if anybody wants to look up like a world-class radiologist. And he reached out to a bunch of doctors. The consensus was we could do like a cleaning of the heel and then reattaching the Achilles or something like that, like a surgery. But the possibility of never being able to run like an ultra after that surgery is a very real possibility. The other possibility was we could do this like PRP injection thing directly into the Achilles. And if it works out, it'll be good. But there's like a 30% chance that we spend the money, we go through the pain, and it doesn't work. So we're 7 days in right now. It's super, super painful. I just left the orthopedic surgeon's office actually for my check-in. And he's like, does it hurt? I'm like, it's so painful. He's like, good. That means it's working. Like, all right, let's go. Let's grow. So, last year, like I mentioned, I had a baby last year, and there was no way that like a week after my baby being born, I was going to leave for a week to go to Death Race. I know other people would do that. They're more hardcore than me. And this time around, I really there's no way to make it to be like prepared for June. And by the way, prepared is like for those of you guys that are listening, it's not like death race is like more than an ultra or less than ultra. It might not have any running at all in it. You know, it's just you don't know what's coming, and you have to be prepared for whatever it is for 3 days of no sleep. So it's I definitely won't be ready for that in whatever capacity that is. So my goal is to go back to death race next year. My goal is, now that you mention it, that you'll be there with me. So so we'll suffer together. And again, it's managing expectations, you know, like they're telling you to do stuff that sucks. And I'm like, yep, with a smile on my face, let's go. It sucks. I did something wrong last death race, and my stomach was really messed up. So as they were giving it like orders of what we were doing next, I was in the porta potty. Mind you, you know, they try to make you uncomfortable. For me, the most uncomfortable situation you can put me in is not like a shootout. It's sitting in a porta potty. Like I have porta potty phobia. So I'm in the porta potty. I miss whatever instructions are being handed out. I'm just trying to survive. And I'm like, oh my God, I get out and I see one of the Cryptea, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I was in the bathroom. He's like, everybody's at the top of the mountain.
Oh no.
So I take off and I'm running as fast as I can to get to the top. As I get to the top, there's kids from death camp, and which I was coaching the whole week leading up to death race.
Yeah.
And the one kid goes, Joe says if we catch you, we get to keep your bib. And the thing is, like, when you're done, they take your bib. And I was like, not today, kids. And so I sent it. Now, as I'm running down the hill, I catch up to like the death racers, and they're like, stop running. We have to finish as a unit.
Yeah.
But in the back of my head is, if these kids catch me, I'm out right now.
Yeah.
So I get to the bottom, and Andy is like, what are you doing here? Where's the rest of your team? And I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, you know, like I was crapping myself. I ran to the top. They told me to stop. The kids are trying to take my jersey. And she looks at Joe and she's like, what's the punishment? And he goes, go sit in the ice bath. And for a moment, I was like, thank God. Because ice bath is something I do every single day. So this guy walks over there with me, and he's like I get in, and it was really like such a nice break to be in there, you know,
Yeah.
because again, management expectations. Like I don't get in there and I'm like in a state of shock. Like I know what happens in that ice bath.
Mm-hmm.
So I get in and I'm just underwater, and I open my eyes, and there's all the ice cubes and like the rays of light coming through the ice cubes. And I had this moment. I was like, you're still in it, bro. Let's go. And I popped my head out, and I was like, all right. And then I stuck around for like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 more hours. And then and then my stomach just didn't hold up after that. But yeah, death races, just be prepared for whatever, you know, like we don't know what's going to happen.
I love it. Yeah. It's on my list of Spartan things to do. And, you know, like, I don't know if you know, Coach Frank up over here in California. Coach Frank, he owns Fortitude Fitness. He's one of the Cryptea. He's done like, I think 7 or 8, like,
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
familiar with who you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. So I had a conversation with him long ago about getting into the endurance side of it and getting into potentially, you know, death race. And it's just, life has had other priorities for me. So I'm definitely going to take you up on that challenge to do a death race at some point. So yeah, I'll be reaching out. I want to be, again, respectful of your time. So do you feel ready for these like 5?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right. Awesome. So I asked questions like this to all the guests, and so just be ready for anything. It's either going to be a short answer, like one sentencer, or a yes or no, and it could be just like that. Okay. So with that said, what is Coach Christian's go-to power breakfast on a race day for a Spartan Beast?
I run fasted, even in ultra.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. That's a different level for sure. Anyone that runs fasted, it's not for the faint of heart for sure.
Yeah, you got to earn it.
Yes, absolutely. If you had a go-to drink on one of these courses and it just popped out of the blue, and you're hitting that point where you're like, I'm thirsty, I need this drink. Like, what would that drink be on a race or a death race or a ultra?
Not because I was, affiliated with them for a long time, but a Fit Aid.
Nice.
Man, dude. Some
Fit Aid
days I would kill for a Fit Aid,
I love those drinks. Okay, number 3. Let's say in life, it doesn't have to be on a Spartan course, it's just in life, right? What superhero or superhero power would you want to be or have to help you through life or through a race?
Probably the power of persuasion.
Ooh, that's deep. Okay. Is there a Marvel or DC character that you know of that you can call out that people can model themselves after? If it's you, then just say it, right? So
yeah, I don't know, the Punisher maybe, but
Punisher.
yeah,
I
think it would be me maybe.
Yeah, we can call you the next superhero there for that. All right. As far as what you do, what I do, and things like that, I know you do Spartan, I know you've done death race. What's the next, adventure, endeavor in racing and fitness things that you want to potentially start or get into? What are you planning to get into?
To get into that I have not currently done yet?
Mm-hmm.
Man, like I don't really have anything like super new that I plan on doing. I just want to, like I can't wait to run another ultra. I'm looking forward to doing death race again, but I don't really have like a bunch of new, like I think the tactical sports, like tactical games, sniper challenge, Patriot games, like that's like 2 years fresh for me.
Okay.
But I can't imagine starting like another new thing from here. Like between, the thing is that training for those events and training for a Spartan race, other than the actual aspect of trigger work, most everything else is the same.
Got it. Okay, I love that. So anyone that's watching, listening, there you go. Coach Christian just mentioned how you need to prepare for these kind of things. One last question, Coach. You ready? Why have you not done a Spartan DECA event yet?
I have done a DECA event.
You have? Oh, okay. Which one? Which one was it?
It was I've done one during a 12-hour hurricane heat in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And then I've done like a DECA strong when I still had my gym. I podiumed at a DECA strong in age group at a Palm Beach event at the convention center. I've done a DECA fit, which I think is the funnest of the distances.
Yeah.
But I've never done the DECA mile. Like it just didn't work out with my schedule while I was there. I was trying to do the DECA ultra.
Yeah.
That happened recently. But scheduling it didn't work out. And then when the doctor heard about it, he's like, that would have been a terrible idea for you to do. And now at this point, I'm like, yeah, that would have been terrible for me to add that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I was gonna bring that up because you shared that you do ultras, you love ultras, and so I think DECA Ultra would be kind of up your alley.
It looks super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I've yet to kind of go that route, ultras or you potentially DECA Ultra, but at some point when things kind of stabilize and slow down for me, as far as what I want to do, because I eventually want to have my own gym, like you.
And the DECA Ultra is 6 DECAs, right?
Something crazy like that. I just remember the word or the number 50. I don't remember if it's like 50 laps or something, but yeah, maybe Coach Yancey, when I get him on here, because I'm going to interview him.
Let's go.
At some point.
Ask him. Be like, we're talking
I'll definitely ask him. Yeah,
you don't have to talk me into it. I just need to be healed and ready for it.
I'll make sure he reaches out to you and gets you in there. So, yeah, that's amazing. So, To wrap up, Coach Christian, what's the best way for my listeners, the audience, to reach out to you? Do you have a website? Do you have an Instagram? How can they find you?
Yeah. My website is just my name, christianbizzotto.com. And most people know me because of YouTube, which is just Christian Bizzotto, first and last name, or from Instagram, which is Christian_Bizzotto. That's Bizzotto.
I love it. Awesome. So you heard it from Coach Christian. Those are his contacts. Reach out to him, connect with him, follow him. He has some really great content as far as what you need to learn and know about just jumping into any Spartan race. Honestly, his content, when you see him in the blue shirt, he's wearing that Spartan staff shirt. He's on course doing Spartan OS, which is, again, Spartan obstacle specialist instructor. He's your go-to guy on the East Coast, in the southeast, right? We have other coaches kind of in the northeast and kind of all over, spread apart all across US. But there's I don't know how many exactly there are of us, but definitely find him if you're on the East Coast or Southeast. Thank you, Coach Christian, for being on here. I appreciate you, brother, for doing that. I'll take you up on that offer about doing a death race with you at some point, because I definitely have that on my list. Till next time, everyone listening, watching, reach out to Coach Christian. Appreciate you being on here, brother. All right. Thank you,
my dude. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Later.
All right. Ending. Stop.